What I recommend we do is we first do this small scale, maybe just a small section of sidewalk, even just try it at your own home. Hi, I'm Phill Sexton with WIT Advisors. Okay, so when we think about how we're going to try to convince ourselves and convince others to make this change from, a primarily solids reliant approach to a primarily liquids reliant approach. Again, we know the benefits, we understand why we need to make this change, but how do you actually make the change? And that's usually where these types of things die on the vine, because we either try to start too big or we try to start at a point where it's a bit unrealistic. So what I recommend we do is we think about it in terms of bags of salt versus small tanks of salt brine. So let's put this in perspective first. What I can do with 5 to 6 bags of this 50-pound bags of salt, I can do with one 2.5 to 3 gallon mix of brine. And so this is literally about 6 to 8 times less salt than I'd have to use if I put it out in a solid form. So never mind the amount of salt itself, but just the amount of effort. So if you think about it in terms of, if I were to take this and fill up a couple of gallons straight from a tank that's off the back of a truck or a UTV, compared to dealing with a sidewalk area where I'd have to rip open 5 to 6 bags minimum to have the same square footage of application. So which one's going to take more effort? Fill up this tank or tear apart 5 to 6 bags, dump it into a spreader, take the spreader down the sidewalk, and we know what happens as well with that. It gets clumped. Starts not working, we end up having to do a lot of it by hand. That application rate becomes uneven, much less consistent, a lot more waste, versus if we take this one single tank with an even application. Never mind the fact now I've got to actually dispose of these bags and the mess that creates in the process. The choice is yours. Now, what I do recommend though is this. This is where the paradigm shift comes into play. If I'm going to change to this versus this, keep in mind there was a point in time years ago when we didn't even have this available to us. How did we deal with situations back then? We either dealt with it or we used a different tool. Years ago we used to chip ice. Then we started to melt it. Then we started to actually try to prevent it. If I take this bag out of the picture, so let's just take the bag out of the picture. I can guarantee you, if you only have this as your tool now, you'll figure out how to make it work. But really the only way to make that work is to make sure that that goes away. What I don't recommend we do is we do this at a grand scale. I think what I recommend we do is we first do this small scale, maybe just a small section of sidewalk, even just try it at your own home. The name of the game though is when you're using liquid as a tool, again, it's prevent the bond, prevent the bond, prevent the bond. This must go down before accumulation first in order for it to prevent the bond, in order for it to then give you that clean scrape. And then afterward, you can then reapply. But again, think about it. Applying this versus many bags of that is the name of the game. You will achieve it if you just take that bag out of the picture. Experiment with it. Just try it for a few storms. So let's sort of try to relate this to another cooking analogy here. So if you think about barbecuing, and if you've always barbecued with a gas grill, and you've heard really good things from your friends about, you should really try charcoal. It's sort of the older way, but it's just a much more efficient heat, gives it much better flavor. Why wouldn't you do it? So let's relate it to this. So the gas grill is the bag of salt. The liquid is the charcoal. They both produce a similar result. It's just that one is perceived now and has actually been proven to be better. But what you wouldn't want to do is purchase a really expensive steak, knowing that you're always used to doing it the bag salt way or the gas grill way, and then quickly put it on to the charcoal method, you're likely going to either burn it or it's just not going to turn out the result that you want the first time. So it does take some practice. It does actually take some testing and gaining confidence in, okay, so this is how this works compared to how I used to do it with this method or with this tool.